Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today we're doing another episode of NBA Hot Takes. You know the drill at this point. Went to Twitter and asked y'all to give me some of your hottest NBA takes for me to react to in this video. I'm going to let you know whether I agree or disagree and why. And as always, I'd love to hear your opinions as well down below in the comments about these hot takes, as well as some hot takes of your own. Before we get into it, as always, please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. And let's go and get into the takes. First one comes from my guy Chase, who says that the Pacers would beat the Bucks in a playoff series. These two teams have developed a little bit of a rivalry over the course of the season, and I mean, it's hard not to when you play each other 5 times in the first half of a season. One of those games was in the in-season tournament where Tyrese Haliburton is hitting the Dame time celebration after hitting a dagger against the Bucks. The Bucks then later have a win against the Pacers where Giannis has a 64 piece, and there was that whole situation where he wanted the game ball, but the Pacers wouldn't give it to him, or maybe they did have the game ball and the Pacers never had in the first place. I don't know, whole confusing thing. But it built up a little bit of a rivalry between these two teams, and the Pacers have won 4 out of the 5 meetings. They've kind of had the Bucks number, and I think they're kind of a bad matchup for the Bucks when it comes to some of those top level Eastern Conference teams. They score a lot, they run fast pace up and down the court, and the Bucks basically play no defense, which the Pacers don't either. If this came to a playoff series, these two teams would probably play games that went up to like 130 to 135 every single night in that series. But despite the Pacers kind of having the Bucks number this season, I do lean the Bucks in this series. They've got more experience. They have the best player in the series in Giannis Antetokounmpo, who has more often than not torched the Pacers, even if the Pacers have gotten out of there for the most part with some wins. I think Dame would have a great playoff series. He usually rises in those big moments. And as much as I like this Pacers team and as good as I think they can be, I do think they're still a year away because when you have the league's pretty much worst defense, it's hard to win a playoff series, especially against a team that has the top-end talent that the Bucks do, even if they've been somewhat underwhelming at some points in the season. I mean, they just got a huge blowout win over the Celtics that maybe is going to give them a bit of momentum, and even though they've been really confusing, they still are a really good team. They're a top 2 seed for a reason, so I'm taking the Bucks, even though I do think the Pacers are one of those teams that, if I'm the Bucks, I don't necessarily want to see in the first round, because the series could get a little bit interesting. Now we've got a take from B-Drip, who says that Zach LaVine and Pascal Siakam won't be traded by the trade deadline. It's kind of crazy to me that we're less than a month away from the deadline. It feels like the season just started, but we're getting close, and so rumors are ramping up, and Siakam and LaVine are two names who certainly seem to be available out there in the market. I'm going to disagree with the Pascal Siakam one. I think he's 100% traded. Rumors have been circulating a lot about him. A number of teams, whether it's the Kings, it's the Pacers, the Sixers have even come up in some talks about Pascal Siakam. I think the Magic were reported to be monitoring him a little bit too. It just seems like there's too much interest in Siakam, and the Raptors traded OG away. They're seemingly gearing up for that rebuild. Reports have come out that they're most likely going to move on from him. So I do think Siakam gets dealt. Plus, he's on an expiring contract, so he probably won't cost as much as some of the other top-end stars on the market. But for Zach LaVine, I'm with you. I don't know if Zach LaVine is going to be traded by the trade deadline. The Bulls have been playing better as of late, even though a lot of the momentum that they built was without Zach LaVine, which honestly hurts his trade value a little bit. Plus the fact that he's making $40 million for the next 3-4 seasons. That's a big contract to stomach for a guy in Zach LaVine, who's very good, don't get me wrong. He's an all-star caliber player, but he's not as versatile as a number of other stars out there. And if you're a team that's looking to add another all-star caliber player, are you prioritizing Zach LaVine over a number of other guys? So I also think Zach LaVine might not be traded by the deadline. If I had to pick, I do think he does, but I think it's not unlikely that LaVine is still a Bull going into this offseason, where eventually, hopefully he actually gets traded. Next take comes from Grimes Muse, who says that Steph Curry realistically should not make the All-Star game. If you ask me, he definitely shouldn't be a starter. Right now, he would be voted in as one by the fans, but I think the medium players are going to kind of shift over to the two guys that deserve it the most, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Luka Doncic. They should 100% be the starters. Then we get to the bench guards, and I would probably go with De'Aaron Fox and Anthony Edwards or Devin Booker, some combination, 2 of those 3 guys, which leaves one of them for a wild card spot, and then 1 wild card spot left. And I do think if I had to pick an all-star roster now, Steph Curry does get one of those last spots, but it is kind of close. It's not been Steph Curry's best season. He's still putting up pretty good stats, 26.7 points per game, shooting 40% from deep, 4.2 boards and 4.8 assists. It's the lowest assist mark of his entire career. It's one of the lower scoring marks in his recent career, one of the lower 3-point percentages. He's not having a great season by Steph Curry standards, and the Warriors are the 12 seed, 13 seed as I record this. They're the 12 seed at the moment, currently behind the Lakers and the Jazz, who have been on fire recently. Shout out to them. Not been a great season for the Warriors, but I do still think Steph Curry's been good enough to grab one of those all-star spots. Plus, with the popularity he has, he's almost 100% going to be on that team. And I don't think it's going to be a robbery or anything like that, because he still is putting up 27 points per game. It's not really his fault that the Warriors are struggling the way they are, even if he's not been great recently. I think he still gets in the game. I think he's deserving of it, although definitely would move him towards the bottom of those guard spots, which I wouldn't have expected myself to say going into this season. Next take comes from Thunder Ring Season, who says that the Celtics should be seen as a Golden State Warrior level team, assuming they're referring to the KD Super Team Warriors. The only reason they're not is because everybody hates the Celtics. I'll agree with the last part. A lot of people do hate the Boston Celtics. I don't, but I know most people do. But I don't agree that the Celtics should be seen as a Golden State Warrior level team. That team had 2 top 5 players and were surrounded by all-stars. Like Steph Curry, Kevin Durant were towards the top of their games. They were destroying the league on a nightly basis. They added Kevin Durant to a 73-win team. If you ask me, that is the best just overall talent-wise team in NBA history. This Celtics team, while they're really, really good and they're currently my championship favorites, they're not up to the level of that team. Their best player in Jason Tatum, in my opinion, is top 10, but he's not a top 5 player, and they had 2 of those caliber guys. This Celtics team is really great. They've got multiple all-star caliber players in Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, maybe Derek White and Jrue Holiday if you want to talk about them, especially their defensive impact. But at the very least, they have 2 all-defensive guards and 3 all-star caliber players. That is a stacked team with some pretty solid options off the bench and room to improve. But saying they're at the level of the best team potentially of all time, I think is taking a little bit too far, even if the Celtics, in my opinion, are the clear favorites to win the Eastern Conference at the moment. Next take comes from R States, who says that Minnesota will finish as the 1 seed, but will lose in the first round in 5 to 6 games. I'm seeing this sentiment a lot. When I asked y'all for these hot takes, a lot of people said that they believe the Minnesota Timberwolves are frauds. And I gotta say, I really don't buy into that. I think this Minnesota team is very capable of not only going to the conference finals, but of winning the Western Conference. They are a really, really good team. High-level defense anchored by maybe the D-Point and Rudy Gobert, a number of all-star caliber talents next to him in Karl-Anthony Towns, and a rising superstar in Anthony Edwards. Great supporting pieces like Jaden McDaniels, Mike Conley, great depth. This Timberwolves team is really, really good. They're not a 1 seed by a fluke. This team is very capable of maintaining that spot the whole season and going into the playoffs as one of the scarier forces in the West. I think a lot of people just don't like Rudy Gobert. They believe they don't have a lot of experience, which, sure, they don't have a deep playoff run under their belt, but this Timberwolves team has made the playoffs twice, and last year gave the Nuggets one of their toughest series of their entire championship run. Plus, I take a look at the competition they might have to face in the first round, and none of the teams necessarily scare me. So, in the plan right now, we have the Pelicans, the Suns, the Rockets, and the Jazz, with the Lakers and Warriors lurking as well. I think they pretty firmly beat the Rockets, Jazz, Lakers, or Warriors. The Suns and Pelicans are a little bit more interesting because I think those teams have higher upside. But if I had to pick today, I would probably take the Minnesota Timberwolves to beat them. It might be like a more 6 or 7 game series against one of those top teams. And I can see why you could think there would be an upset because the West is so stacked and there are a lot of great teams towards the bottom of the conference. But I do still think the Timberwolves get the series done. I don't think they would lose to any of those teams in 5 to 6 games, barring a major injury. And I think ultimately they beat any of those teams right now in that play-in range. They're just really good. They're not frauds whatsoever. This Minnesota team is a lot better than I think most people give them credit for. Next take comes from Monty, who says that the Knicks are going to the Eastern Conference Finals. This is probably a take that's coming off the back of this crazy streak the Knicks have been on since acquiring OG Anunoby. Since grabbing him, they beat the Minnesota Timberwolves by 6, Bulls by 16, Sixers by 26 points, 36 points even, beat the Wizards by 16, Blazers by 28. The only game that they lost was most recently to the Dallas Mavericks, where they lost by 4, but that was a game where they were down huge in the fourth quarter and almost managed to come back and win, just barely couldn't pull it off. So this Knicks team has been really good, and they've got enough wins to move themselves up to the 6th seed. They're just 1 game out of the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. I think it's a team that's very capable of making a deep playoff run. The problem is, I still do like the Celtics, Bucks, and Sixers over them, and I feel like the highest they're going to get is a 4 seed. I don't think they're going to catch the Sixers, Bucks, or Celtics, which would mean a second round matchup most likely against the Boston Celtics, and I'm not taking the Knicks in that series. So I do think they're capable of making a run if they get some good matchups, but I don't think those matchups are going to quite come their way. Maybe if the Knicks make another big acquisition around the deadline, which they seem postured to do, I could see a world where it happens, but at the very least, this Knicks team is really good. The OG Anunoby trade has been big for them, and hey, maybe they get some good matchups, get some luck, and they end up in the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think it's 100% out of the picture for them this season. Next take comes from the Basketball G, who says that if the the Oklahoma City Thunder match up with the Lakers in the first round, the Lakers will upset them, and I'm an OKC fan. Well, I'm also a Thunder fan, and I don't necessarily agree with this. This is a take that I've seen all over the place, that the Lakers would beat a number of these top teams in a playoff series. The problem is right now the Lakers aren't even in the play-in tournament. If the season ended today, they're missing the play-in entirely, sitting at the 11th seed. Now, do I think they'll make the play-in? Yeah, but there is a chance they don't even make the playoffs with the way they're playing. Now, they'll probably make some type of addition. DeJounte Murray is rumored to become a Laker around the deadline, or at least that's a big possibility. But as it currently stands, I think the Thunder definitely beat the Lakers. The Lakers have a lot of size on the interior, which is a problem for the Thunder. They don't really have that. But the Lakers just don't have the offense to keep up with the Thunder's high-powered offense. The Thunder are much more well-rounded. I think Shea is the best player in that series. And as much as the Thunder don't have a lot of experience, I don't think it matters that much. This team has been really poised. Every time we play a big matchup, the Thunder pop up for it. It's not like they're shying away from the limelight, that they're losing those games. They're destroying the teams that are worse than them pretty often, which has been nice to see as a Thunder fan, that they're not messing around with those worst teams. So I don't know, maybe it's just my Thunder bias, but I believe that the Thunder would pretty comfortably beat the Lakers in a series right now if the Lakers do end up matching up with them through the play-in tournament, or I guess if they move up a little bit, the Thunder drop down a little bit, like a 3-6 matchup. There's a possibility the Lakers do have LeBron James and AD. They've got that experience, but just in terms of looking at the teams, I think the Thunder are clearly the better team right now. Final take comes from Anthony, who says that if Paolo keeps playing like this, he's all NBA. Also, Magic can make the conference finals. I'm going to say with the conference finals thing right off the bat, I don't think so. They just don't have enough established talent at the moment, if you ask me. They've got a great 1-2 in Paolo and Franz, but outside of that, the talent is a bit inconsistent. I think they need more spacing around Paolo. Primarily, the shooting is still really not good. The defense has been great, but it's taken a little bit of a step back as of recently. And the Magic have dropped down the standings to the 8th spot after hovering right around the 2-3 range for a majority of the season. So they're coming back down to earth a little bit, but I do think this Magic team is still really good. They're ahead of schedule. They're better than I thought they would be, and they've been really exciting. And a lot of that has been Paolo, who is playing out of his mind right now. Like you said, he had 25 points this past game, had 35, 32, 43 recently against the Kings, and a monster effort. He's shooting 37% from deep, which is huge. Paolo's been fantastic. If he continues to play like this, if he keeps ramping up, if the Magic can get themselves back up to a middle-of-the-pack Eastern Conference team, I think there's definitely a world where Paolo ends up an All-NBA. Off the top of my head, I think he's right there in the fringe at the moment. I don't think I would have him on the team, but it's really close. Don't get me wrong. I'm really excited to see what Paolo can continue to do this season. He's 100% in all, so it's not even a conversation. And hey, the fact that we're even discussing him as potentially All-NBA in his second season is kind of ridiculous. So yeah, those are my opinions on these hot takes. Let me know down below in the comments what some of your hot takes are, as well as your opinions on these takes themselves. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real One Save Back.